Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. So, what's been going on with Donald Trump in the news lately? Well, following the mass shootings that we had in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, of course, the flags at the White House were flown at half mast, half staff, as is tradition after such a major event. Now, the thing is, though, they were flying until the 8th of August. August 8th, the 8th month of the year. 8-8. And this has sort of sparked somewhat of an internet firestorm of, well, not only on the internet, because it's also been mentioned on a handful of mainstream media outlets, particularly when a former FBI director, Frank Figliuzzi, I hope I'm getting that right, started talking about this. He had a conversation with Brian Williams about it on MSNBC, saying that, what's the eighth letter of the alphabet? H. What do you do when you have two H's together? Heil Hitler. Yeah, that's what they're sort of saying that's going on. Was Donald Trump blowing a dog whistle to the white supremacists, to the neo-Nazis, and to all of the people in the world that would have recognized that? Now, the first people that I heard talk about this was the group The Federalist. You know, they have a show, and they were mentioning it, and they were saying that it's just silly. But in reality, 8-8 is actually a symbol of, meaning Heil Hitler is an internet code, and the Anti-Defamation League has talked about it. But right now, I'm on townhall.com, and just to give the most basic introduction, a former FBI Assistant Director of Counterintelligence spied a secret neo-Nazi signal in how Donald Trump chose to mourn the victims of Dayton and Austin, Texas. This says Austin, Texas. I was pretty sure the shooting was in El Paso, if I'm not mistaken, right? But they did write Austin here. Frank Figliuzzi, who is also an NBC News contributor, told MSNBC that the president might be dog-whistling white supremacists by choosing to fly the national flag at half-staff until August 8th. And apparently, it's like, when I first heard about this, I thought that he was just making that up, like it was just somebody who came up with his own contrived thing about how H is the eighth letter of the alphabet, so if you have two H's together, then it must mean Heil Hitler 8-8. But, no, I mean, like we said, the ADL did make a statement about it. Well, it's in their literature that you can read online for free, that is indeed a symbol of, again, it's an internet code for Heil Hitler. But the thing with this is, we got to go back to something called The United States of Paranoia, which was a book that was written by an individual, Jesse Walker. And what he talks about is, human beings are pattern-seeking creatures, and we all look at the world and we try to make sense of it, and we start kind of placing things together, and sometimes we jump to conclusions, or sometimes we just put the dots in a certain order. We want to see things in a very particular way. And is this this contributor here, doing some of that? Yeah, it probably seems like there's just a little bit of that. I mean, that's a very, very kind of bland conspiracy theory. The flags are flying until the 8th of August, therefore 8-8. He must be trying to say Heil Hitler. Donald Trump is trying to use that to draw attention to the Nazi battle cry or whatever. I mean, but that's what it happens, though. The thing that Walker really expanded upon is that it has nothing to do with intelligence. People who sort of see these conspiracy-type patterns, it has nothing to do with intelligence, education, background, male, female. And this is true. I mean, like, if you look at, like, who is watching conspiracy theory videos, it's not only men, and it's not only 18 to 25-year-olds, and it's not only white people. It's all over the spectrum, because we all do this. This is a very big type of universal commonality. We all try to think about things in patterns, and we try to make sense of things in patterns. I mean, most of us anyway. I think the overwhelming majority of people. So you really have to look at some of the things about this here. Another thing, though, that we got to bring up, if we're going to talk about conspiracy theory skepticism, we've mentioned Jesse Walker on the channel before, so we've also talked a little bit about Kurt Eichenwald, who really got into this stuff when he was writing for Newsweek. And he said, though, the way a conspiracy theory forms is much like this here with Figliuzzi. it's not so much as, okay, there was a meeting and somebody has a document from that meeting that says, hey, look at the contents of what they were discussing and let's have a discussion about that. Instead, it's like, oh, look where the flag is and look what day it is. Oh, let's just put stuff together. It's like we're living in Jim Carrey's The Number 23, that movie or something, back when he was trying to do thrillers and whatnot. Now, I'm not someone who is an enormous fan of the president. If you've heard any of my political uploads in the past, you'll probably know that. But at the same time, though, it's like, isn't this a bit of a stretch? And isn't this a bit of a stretch even for just mainstream cable news? I know they can get silly sometimes just to increase viewership, and we start talking about this stuff. But if they're going to be getting silly on national television, it's going around all the outlets. Once again, I'm hearing about that from a secondary commentary source, and then you start reading the articles, and you get just kind of like caught up in some of this stuff because you just want to know what's really going on. One of the things, though, about Donald Trump making a sort of dog whistle to the neo Nazis of America is, remember, this is the guy that has a Jewish son in law, a Jewish convert daughter, and Jewish grandchildren. And this is a big thing that we can examine with the Trump administration because they were talking about this during the Charlottesville riots. Like Vice did a documentary about some of the people who were involved, with the very large display of hate at Charlottesville that we had. And they're just like, how are you supporting Donald Trump and you're saying you don't like Jewish people? But then, what about Jared Kushner? What about Ivanka Trump? It's like they are Jewish and they're part of his family, and they're like, yeah, we like Trump, but oh yeah, we don't like Jared Kushner. And I mean, they completely overlook the fact that Ivanka Trump has converted to Judaism, and then they say they don't like Jews, but they like her, and it's a giant mess. I mean, if you want to have a real honest conversation about something, should it be about Donald Trump saying that the flags can fly at half mast, half staff until the 8th of August? I mean, 8/8, maybe that means Heil Hitler. Or do you want to talk about the reasons why people like Richard Spencer, who coined the term alt-right, endorsed him, about why David Duke endorsed him? David Duke was present during the Charlottesville riots and claimed that his free speech got violated because the governor called a state of emergency. Yeah, I don't think it still works like that. There are many laws that work all together at once. Furthermore, if the governor can use the law to his advantage, and you can use the law to your advantage, guess what? You're both human beings. Just because someone is in office, it doesn't mean they're any less human than you are. If you want to use the law to your advantage, why can't the governor? It's like, no, I guess I'm just sort of saying I'm not a big David Duke fan. I guess, peace, love, joy for all human beings, not only for some like the way those guys promote. But if you want to have a big conversation, why did David Duke endorse Trump and proudly proclaim that he voted for him? Why did Richard Spencer endorse Trump? And Richard Spencer was the one doing the Nazi salute after the Trump inauguration, saying, Hail Trump, Heil Trump, whatever that was. And those are the things that you should be examining. I think, though, that the MSM is really going to go with the fluffier stories because they're more emotional. They get people a little bit worked up, and it's like it's not very authentic news reporting on the fact of people like MSNBC. But let's continue in this article from Town Hall. The president is either getting really good advice and rejecting it, or he's getting really bad advice. The former assistant FBI director did not shy away from explicitly accusing the president of, more generally, inspiring white supremacy through rhetoric and action. Okay, you want to say something like that? I mean, it'd be good if you brought up some specific examples, because to say that just you have the two eights, August 8th, therefore it's 8/8, he must be saying Heil Hitler. Well, once again, it's that Kurt Eichenwald example in a nutshell. How does he have definitive certainty that this exact action is a call to white supremacy? Continuing, our chief executive is seen almost as a mentor and a radicalizer. This is referring to white supremacy. Specifically, Figliuzzi said the president's use of the collective voice dog whistled his support for white supremacy. The president should have said, I condemn white hate and ideology, rather than the nation must condemn it. I mean, now, not to sound like I'm, diehard on the Trump train, I didn't vote for him. It's like this is once again reading almost too much into things where he's just sort of like, again does he have this exact certain piece of information that when Donald Trump says the nation must condemn white supremacy, he's excluding himself? Like, all right, he doesn't use the pronoun I, but once again, is he a mind reader? Is this guy, this former FBI guy, an MSNBC contributor, is he a wizard, a sorcerer? How does he know that that was specifically planned to say that the nation must condemn it? If I know one thing about Donald Trump, and you'll probably agree with this too, is he's not good at following scripts. I mean, that's one of the reasons why so many people attend his rallies. That's one of the reasons why so many people voted for Donald Trump, is because he's not good at following the script, and he just talks extemporaneously. Someone who is not good at that is Joe Biden, mind you. I mean, Joe Biden will probably make another comment about, no, I'm not even going to say it, I'm going to sound way too racist, and people are going to think I'm serious about it. Ugh. But Joe Biden has a lot of trouble getting off script, whereas when Donald Trump does it, I mean, his base seems to, they applaud rather than condemn, which happens to Biden more or less. And we conclude here by saying the MSNBC segment has inspired much scorn and ridicule from conservatives on Twitter. Well, I don't identify as conservative. I don't identify as liberal. I flat out tell you anti-partisan, anti-labels. That's what we're doing right here. The thing is, though, I mean, I mentioned I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Hillary either. I voted for Gary Johnson, and where I live, I mentioned I'm from West Virginia. I have to drive to my polling place, and my father flat out told me, don't do it, it's not worth the trip. It's not worth it if you're just going to vote for Gary Johnson, just stay home. But, I did that anyway, and, well, I guess not much happened. But, I still, did my civic duty and wanted to participate in the voting process. You can condemn me and tear me apart for my voting decision. We all put ourselves to that level of scrutiny. But back to Donald Trump. I mean, MSNBC has got to come up with something better than this. Is this the best attack that they have? Furthermore, in terms of the creation of a conspiracy theory, this is not even that good of one. Once again, there's always the slightest possibility that a conspiracy theory could be true, unless you get something that is kind of complete in debunking, but now they're just almost playing word games. But the thing is, this isn't just some channel like this on YouTube. This is going out to millions of people. And we were talking the other day about how the MSM intentionally puts out disinfo. I mean, or they put out things that aren't very certain of. And this is a perfect example of it. No certainty whatsoever that Donald Trump was intentionally flying the flags at half-staff until the 8th of August because he wanted to say Heil Hitler in a coded message. How have they demonstrated that they have certainty of that, yet they're going to broadcast it to millions of people? And furthermore, I mean, it's getting into the other media segments, and they're talking about it, which is how I found it, and now I'm talking about it, and it goes out, it just spreads like wildfire. But the thing is, though, we got to hold the MSM to a higher standard when it comes to things like presenting factual information, as well as just avoiding disinfo for the sake of creating firestorms and for the sake of spreading misinformation for their own benefit. And, MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN are absolutely horrible with that. I don't watch those things regularly. I haven't watched them regularly for years. It's just like, it got to the point where it's just too much trash, but then you gravitate towards some more things like talk radio, they're trashy. Talk radio is equally trashy, just in a little slightly different fashion. But anyway, kind of wrapping up this segment here, what do you think about the conspiracy theory associated with Donald Trump? Do you actually believe that he chose to fly the flags at half-staff until the 8th of August after the recent mass shootings in the United States because he wanted to say Heil Hitler to the country? Or do you think that this is just absolute baloney? Do you think there's any truth that this thing could be true? And once again, I was quoting the article from townhall.com by Yuichiro Kakutani on former top brass, Trump's half-staff order is dog-whistling white supremacist, townhall.com. I would love to hear some comments that you would have to say. Also, if you just have anything to say at all about Donald Trump and any of the things we discussed, I would love to hear a comment from you. That's all for me now. Until next time.